Jui Wan is a completely bitchless man who has never felt the touch of a woman in his entire life. The only people he had were his parents, but they tragically died in a car accident on Christmas Eve. Since then, every Christmas has been the same. He wanders around aimlessly while everyone else spends time with their wives and kids. That only makes Jui Wan feel even lonelier. All he can do is watch people from a distance while they avoid him because of his intimidating height. As he's roaming the streets, he notices an old man dressed as Santa begging for money. Feeling bad for the guy, he decides to spare him some cash instead of wasting it on beer and junk food. The old man gratefully thanks Jui Wan and asks if there's anything he wishes for in life. The question instantly creeps him out, so he tries to walk away, but the old man keeps pressing him. Eventually, Jui Wan gives up and jokingly says he wants to win the lottery. The old man immediately calls out his BS and tells him to stop lying and reveal the wish hidden deep inside his heart. That hits Jui Wan harder than expected. He realizes the only thing he truly wants is a happy family, a beautiful wife, and a cute daughter. The old man promises that wish will come true, and if it doesn't, he'll stop being Santa forever. Thinking the guy is just some Santa-obsessed weirdo, Jui Wan leaves and heads back to his tiny rundown apartment. Later that night, he boards a train packed with couples. Sick of looking at them, he closes his eyes and falls asleep. It's the last time he ever sleeps on Earth. The moment he opens his eyes again, he's inside a cage on a moving carriage alongside several other people. Everyone looks terrible, like they haven't eaten in days. Jui Wan seems slightly better off, but there's one huge problem. He's completely naked. As he looks around, he hears the soldiers escorting the carriage speaking a language he can't understand. He also notices that everyone inside the cage is chained with heavy shackles. That's when it clicks. This is a slave caravan. Jui Wan finally realizes that creepy Santa straight up ice-guyed him into another world and somehow stole Truck Kun's job. Before he can fully process it, the freezing cold starts making him shiver. Lost and confused, his eyes land on a dead slave whose clothes are still intact. Even though he feels guilty about robbing a corpse, he doesn't have much choice unless he wants to freeze to death. After putting the clothes on, he sits down and thinks about that weird Santa. Was becoming a slave really supposed to lead him to the loving family he always wanted? Or was Santa just trolling him? Either way, he desperately hopes this is all a dream and that he'll wake up in his warm apartment. Days pass, Jui Wan slowly adapts to life among the slaves. His cheeks become hollow, his appearance grows rougher, and the constant hunger starts breaking him down. Eventually, the carriage stops at a village where the soldiers line up the slaves to be auctioned. For the first time, Jui Wan sees a tiny bit of hope. Sure, being sold as a slave sucks, but at least he'd get fed regularly. Plus, he's confident that with his height and decent looks, some rich guy will definitely buy him. Reality hits him like a truck. Nobody even glances in his direction. Village after village, every other slave gets sold while Jui Wan remains behind. Eventually, he loses all hope. He curses that creepy Santa for lying to him about happiness and dumping him into this hellhole. Unable to endure the suffering any longer, Jui Wan decides to end it all by driving a nearby fork into his neck. But right before he can do it, an angel appears before him and reaches out a helping hand. Jui Wan freezes. The woman standing before him is unbelievably beautiful. In her hand is a piece of bread that somehow looks better than anything he's ever seen, even at a 3-Michelin-star restaurant. The woman tries speaking to him, but Jui Wan can't understand a single word. Not because of the language, but because he's completely distracted by her beauty and the adorable little daughter standing beside her. Previously, inside a shabby little hut, the beautiful Liz and her daughter are sharing a small dinner together. The portions are tiny, and worried that her daughter might still be hungry, Liz gives her own share to the girl. The little girl is happy, but she doesn't want her mother going hungry either. So she splits the food in half, keeping one part for herself and giving the rest back to Liz. Liz is about to thank her when loud banging suddenly erupts from the front door. Opening it, she finds the village chief outside. He tells her not to open the door fully and to simply listen. The chief explains that soldiers have arrived with several slaves and that the village will be purchasing one of them to become her husband. He urges Liz to prepare herself because she'll be moving back to the mountain. Before leaving, he also reminds her to prepare food for the soldiers since they'll arrive by daybreak. The news hits Liz like a punch to the gut. Her previous marriage had been a complete nightmare. She was beaten almost every day and forced to endure endless suffering. The thought of going through that again terrifies her, and for a moment she considers running away. But then she looks at the young girl. The child was left behind by her former husband from a previous marriage. They haven't known each other for very long, yet Liz can't bring herself to abandon her. Sensing her mother's distress, the little girl wraps her tiny arms around Liz and tries comforting her. Liz eventually stops crying and puts the girl to bed. The child doesn't even have a name yet, which makes Liz even more afraid that another marriage could drag them both into a new nightmare. That nightmare began years ago when her own father sold her for nothing more than a rabbit's skin. A man living on the mountain bought her, and before she could even unpack her belongings, he showed up and beat her for being too slow. Things never improved. The abuse and torture continued day after day. Her spirit would have completely broken if not for the little girl who appeared like an angel in the middle of her personal hell. One day, after beating Liz once again, the man left for the forest to hunt and never returned. Later, the village chief informed her that he had been killed by a wild animal and that his body was never recovered. At first, Liz was overjoyed, then reality kicked in. In these backward times, a woman without a husband was practically helpless and couldn't survive alone. That's why Liz decides to face her fears instead of running away. After all, she can't abandon her daughter. The following morning, Liz prepares herself and bakes a few pieces of bread. Carrying the food outside, she heads toward the parked carriages. That's when she notices a man trying to unalive himself by pressing a fork against his neck. The sight instantly reminds her of her own darkest moments and how she once considered ending her life the exact same way, but she couldn't do it. So without hesitation, Liz rushes over and stops the man before he can hurt himself. Looking at his sunken cheeks and messy appearance, she offers him a piece of bread. Before she can say anything else, the village chief arrives and tells her to return to her hut while he handles the slave purchase. Liz and the little girl take one final look at the man before leaving. That man is Wan. He can barely process what just happened. Someone had offered him food right when he was about to give up on life. Everything else disappears from his mind as he focuses entirely on the bread in his hands. Unfortunately, before he can take a single bite, the soldiers drag him out of the cage and present him before the village chief. Wan and two other slaves kneel on the ground while soldiers surround them. Then one of the soldiers pulls out a knife and slices their arms. Blood drips onto 2 sheets of paper, causing them to glow with a faint blue light. Wan is completely stunned. Is this magic? The realization only makes him more curious about this strange world where slavery still exists and magic is apparently real. Once the contracts are completed, a soldier quietly whispers something into the village chief's ear. The chief nods before approaching Wan to inspect him. Meanwhile, Liz and her daughter return to their hut. A village woman brings them supplies and explains that Liz's new husband doesn't understand their language, which may make communication difficult. The woman can see that Liz is still traumatized. Trying to reassure her, she mentions that although the new husband appears to be a commoner, his hands are as soft as a noble's. She also reminds Liz that nobody liked her previous husband and only tolerated him because he worked as the mountain keeper. If the new man can do the same job well, they may finally be able to live comfortably. But Liz doesn't care about any of that. She simply hopes he isn't violent. Just then, the village chief opens the door and brings her new husband inside. Liz is shocked. It's the exact same man she saw trying to unalive himself earlier. Seeing him up close makes her realize just how huge he actually is, which immediately makes her nervous. Wan also recognizes her as the woman who gave him bread, though he has no idea why she's trembling so much. Before he can figure anything out, the village chief grabs his arm and places him beside Liz and her daughter. Then he forcefully locks their arms together, making them look like the most awkward newlywed couple imaginable. Wan doesn't understand a single word being said, but judging by the atmosphere and his current situation, he quickly realizes what's happening. He's getting married. At that moment, he remembers the creepy Santa. The old man wasn't lying when he promised him a cute rabbit-like wife and an adorable mongoose daughter. For the first time in a very long while, Wan finally feels happy that his dream might actually be coming true. Even so, Wan can't help being pissed at that creepy Santa for making him go through all this trouble. He swears that if he ever runs into that old man again, he'll make him suffer even worse. Unfortunately, Wan's angry expression ends up terrifying Liz and the little girl, both of whom are already carrying trauma from their past experiences. Meanwhile, the village chief is pleased to see Wan looking full of energy. The job of a mountain keeper is no joke, and only someone strong can handle it. To make sure he's capable enough, the chief decides to test him. First, he sends a villager to challenge Wan to a handshake contest. Even though Wan doesn't understand their language, he can tell what they're trying to do, so he grips the man's hand with all his strength. The villager instantly regrets his decision. Wan nearly crushes his hand without even looking like he's trying. Satisfied with the result, the village chief moves on to the next test. This time, he hands Wan a bow and signals for him to shoot a wild rabbit. The problem is that Wan has never touched a bow in his life. The only archers he's ever seen were at the Olympics. Trying his best to copy their stance, he fires an arrow. The shot barely misses the rabbit. Surprisingly, the village chief still seems impressed and even claps for him. Ju-Wan has absolutely no clue what's going on when Liz and the little girl suddenly approach him carrying a basket. Seeing her up close again, Ju-Wan can't get over how beautiful Liz is. He still can't believe she's actually his wife now. The thought alone makes him blush. The village chief immediately realizes this guy has probably never been around women before, so he decides to leave them alone and give them time to get comfortable with each other. Now that nobody else is around, Liz becomes even more nervous. She has no idea how to deal with her new husband. Still, she knows she has responsibilities as a wife. So she spreads a cloth across the ground, takes food out of the basket, and serves a portion to Ju-Wan, the little girl, and herself. The meal is painfully awkward. Ju-Wan wants to break the silence, but he can't speak their language. He can't even introduce himself. That only makes him curse that creepy Santa even more for dumping him in some random fantasy world. Still, despite everything, he's grateful. Without Santa's help, he would have never gotten a family like this. Once they're done eating, the village chief returns and leads them toward their cabin on the mountain. The journey is long and steep, exhausting both Liz and the little girl, who are already malnourished. Ju-Wan quickly notices their struggle. As the man of the family, he decides to help. When he approaches Liz, she immediately becomes frightened and wonders what he's about to do. Ju-Wan is the kind of guy who would never touch a woman without permission. But he doesn't know the language and there isn't enough time to explain himself, so he simply picks both of them up and starts walking uphill. As he carries them, he realizes just how undernourished they are from how little they weigh. That thought only strengthens his determination. He wants to learn the language, communicate properly with them, and make sure they eat enough to grow healthy and strong. Even though Liz can't understand his thoughts, she can see the determination in his eyes. For the first time, her guard starts to lower. She even begins wiping the sweat from his face as they walk. Eventually, the three of them reach the mountaintop. Ju-Wan thanks the village chief for guiding them there. After the chief leaves, Ju-Wan turns toward the cabin that will now be their home. The place is in horrible condition. The sight alone makes him shiver as he realizes he might have to spend another freezing night in the cold. While silently complaining about his luck, he steps inside. That's when he finds Liz standing there with tears in her eyes. Wanting to know what happened, he starts toward her. But before he can do anything, Liz runs right past him and disappears. After running for a while, she finally stops beside a lake. There, the reason for her reaction becomes clear. Someone had broken into the cabin and stolen everything. The dishes, the table, the bow, the hammer, the knife, and even their farming hoe were all gone. With nothing left, she can't repair the damaged cabin. That means they'll be forced to spend the night in the cold without any protection from wild animals. As Liz falls deeper into despair, Ju-Wan finally catches up to her. He's relieved to find her safe. Noticing that she's been crying the whole time, he quietly sits beside her and gently places a hand on her head. Even though Liz can't understand a word he's saying, she can tell he's trying to comfort her. The gesture makes her feel better, but the worries remain. She still has no idea how they're supposed to survive here. The cabin is falling apart and her new husband doesn't exactly look like someone who's done manual labor before. But fixing the cabin isn't even the biggest problem. The real issue is food. To survive, they need to hunt. And Ju-Wan doesn't seem like someone who knows how to use a weapon. Yet despite all the negative thoughts filling her mind, her heart feels strangely calm. Just seeing Ju-Wan beside her brings a sense of relief. For some reason, she feels certain that he'll find a way to make everything okay. The emotions become too much to handle. And before she realizes it, tears begin streaming down Liz's face once again. Ju-Wan lets Liz cry everything out while he talks to her. He tells her that back in his original world, he lost his parents when he was still young. Even though life felt completely hopeless at times, he kept moving forward. And he's glad he did. Because if he hadn't, he never would have met her. That's why he wants to make sure that both she and her daughter are protected, cared for, and provided for the rest of their lives. Liz can't understand a single word he's saying, but she can feel the sincerity behind them. For the first time, she completely lowers her guard. She wraps her arms around Ju-Wan and releases all the emotions she's been holding inside for years. But when the little girl sees her mother crying, she immediately assumes Ju-Wan must have hurt her, just like her previous father used to do. So she rushes over and tries to pull Liz away from him. Instead, Ju-Wan gently pulls her into the hug as well. He still doesn't know who the girl's real father is or why Liz offered him food when she barely had any herself. But he knows one thing for sure, they're his family now. At that moment, he promises himself that he'll become the best husband and the best father possible. he'll give them such a good life that neither of them will ever have a reason to cry again. After the family's accidental trauma bonding session comes to an end, they return to the cabin. Once inside, an awkward silence fills the room. After crying in front of each other, nobody knows how to act anymore. Eventually, Ju-won decides to break the tension by introducing himself. Since neither Liz nor the little girl understands Korean, he slowly pronounces his name so they can follow along. Fortunately, both of them are quick learners and manage to say his name correctly almost immediately. Next, he points at them, asking for their names as well. Liz goes first and introduces herself while teaching him how to pronounce it. Ju-won compliments her name before turning to the little girl. When he asks for hers, she stays silent. She was never given a name by her previous father. And after that man died, life became so chaotic that Liz never got the chance to give her one either. Ju-won can't believe someone has gone this long without a name, so he decides to give her one himself. After thinking for a moment, he chooses Dorothy, inspired by one of his favorite childhood stories, The Wizard of Oz. The little girl instantly loves the name and happily thanks Ju-won for giving her something so beautiful. Ju-won smiles. He hopes he can give her the same kind of wonderful life that Dorothy had in the story. Later that evening, Ju-won stands outside chopping logs for the fireplace. A short distance away, Liz quietly watches him while replaying everything that happened today. Under her breath, she softly repeats his name. To her, it sounds elegant and mysterious despite belonging to a language she doesn't understand. The more she thinks about it, the more curious she becomes about who Ju-won really is and where he came from. Throughout her entire life, no man has ever treated her kindly. Not her father, not her husband, no one. That's why she struggles to understand why Ju-won is so good to her. Lost in thought, she doesn't notice that Ju-won has spotted her watching. He waves toward her and calls out her name. The sound snaps her out of her gloomy thoughts. For the first time, she takes a proper look at him. She notices his dark hair and dark eyes, which remind her of a legend she recently heard. According to that story, a distant kingdom was fighting a war and summoned a hero from another world. That hero was also said to have black hair and black eyes. For a brief moment, Liz wonders if Ju-won could somehow be connected, but she quickly dismisses the idea. No legendary hero would end up in a rundown village like this, and definitely not as a slave. While she's busy wondering about his identity, Ju-won has already walked over to her. Looking at him more closely, she realizes his hair and eyes actually lean more toward brown than black. He's just a regular guy. A really tall regular guy. The realization eases her worries. At the same time, it leaves her feeling strangely embarrassed. She doesn't even understand why she was thinking about him so much in the first place. Ju-won finds her shifting emotions amusing. Without thinking much of it, he reaches over and gently pats her on the head. Liz enjoys the gesture far more than she expected. A warm feeling spreads through her chest. Seeing her relaxed expression only makes her look even cuter. And before his brain can catch up with his heart, Ju-won leans forward and lightly kisses her on the lips. Liz completely freezes. She never expected something like that. Ju-won freezes too. The moment reality hits him, he panics. Embarrassed beyond belief, he immediately turns around and runs away. As he flees, he mentally scolds himself. He can't believe he just kissed Liz when they've only known each other for a single day. While trying to figure out how he's ever going to recover from this disaster, he suddenly realizes something. He's wandered way too deep into the forest. Looking around, he starts searching for a path back to the cabin. That's when he feels a heavy presence behind him. Slowly, Ju-won turns around. Standing there is a massive wolf nearly as large as he is. And for the first time all day, Ju-won is absolutely terrified. Ju-won struggles to decide whether he should run or stay and fight the wolf. After a moment of hesitation, he grips a stick lying on the ground and mentally prepares himself for battle. The wolf is ready too. Without warning, it lunges straight at him. Armed with nothing but a stick, Ju-won quickly raises it between himself and the beast, blocking the attack at the last second. The wolf's teeth sink into the wood and get stuck. Seeing an opening, Ju-won immediately drives a powerful punch straight into the wolf's face. The hit only enrages the beast. With a vicious bite, the wolf snaps the stick clean in half. Now that its jaws are free again, its deadly fangs become a threat once more. Ju-won realizes defense is no longer an option. He decides to attack first. But the wolf reacts faster and sinks its teeth into his arm, tearing open a massive wound near his wrist. Ju-won recoils in agony. The pain feels like his entire arm has been set on fire. Then he looks down and realizes it literally has. Actual flames are erupting from his flesh. Ju-won is stunned. Is this magic? The sight instantly boosts his with confidence. Even the wolf seems frightened by the mysterious flames. The beast tries to retreat, but Juiwan doesn't let it escape. He rushes forward and starts hammering it with his burning fist. Punch after punch crashes into the wolf. Its howls echo through the forest, but Juiwan shows absolutely no mercy. He keeps swinging until the beast finally goes silent. Once the fight is over, Juiwan collapses onto the ground and struggles to catch his breath. While recovering, he stares at the arm that had been engulfed in flames only moments ago. Expecting burns or injuries, he carefully checks it. There's nothing, not a single mark. This makes him wonder if he somehow managed to use magic without any training or guidance. The thought reminds him of all the fantasy novels he used to read. Excited, he immediately starts experimenting. Fireball, nothing happens. Firestorm, still nothing. Firewall, no luck. He even tries dramatic incantations straight out of novels, but absolutely nothing works. Eventually, Juiwan gives up. There has to be some trick behind using magic properly. Still, he's completely certain he possesses magical abilities. After all, the arm that should have had a huge bite wound is now perfectly healed. Juiwan becomes determined to master this power as quickly as possible. Not only would it make him a better hunter, but it could also allow him to heal his family. And on this mountain, there isn't even a doctor around. Clenching his fists, Juiwan swears to become stronger as fast as possible. He wants to protect his family. He wants to provide them with a better life. Most importantly, he never wants to be called a curse again. The label still haunts him. After his parents died, his grandfather took him in because none of his other relatives wanted him. But shortly afterward, his grandfather passed away too. His cousins blamed him for it. They beat him and called him a cursed child, claiming everyone who cared for him eventually died. Juiwan forcefully shoves those painful memories aside. Right now, he has more important things to do. The wolf's blood could attract other predators, so he hoists the massive carcass onto his shoulders and carries it back to the mountain cabin. His plan is simple: turn it into food for his family. Back at home, Liz and Dorothy are preparing dinner when they suddenly spot a wolf's head staring through the window. Dorothy immediately bursts into tears. The sight is way too terrifying for her. Hearing her cries, Liz grabs a knife and rushes over to protect her. Nervously peeking outside, she quickly realizes it's just Juiwan carrying a dead wolf over his shoulder. Relief washes over her, but then she notices the injuries covering his face. Without hesitation, she rushes outside to check on him. It doesn't take long for her to realize he must have faced something extremely dangerous. Otherwise, he wouldn't look this battered. Juiwan tries to reassure her, explaining that there are only a few scratches and that he's perfectly fine. Liz can't understand his words, but she understands his intentions. She immediately throws her arms around him. The sudden hug catches Juiwan completely off guard. He never expected Liz to take the initiative like that. Dorothy joins in as well, wrapping her arms around his knees. Even though they can't communicate properly, Juiwan can tell exactly what they're trying to say. They were worried about him. Very worried. That realization makes him feel guilty. He promised himself he would never make them cry, yet not even a full day has passed and he's already broken that promise. The following morning, after everyone has calmed down, Juiwan starts processing the wolf. He skins the hide and separates the meat from the bones. Back in his old world, he used to watch his grandfather, who enjoyed raising animals and occasionally butchered them for special occasions. Because of that, Juiwan knows the basics, but actually doing it himself is far harder than his grandfather ever made it look. Still, he has no choice. His family needs food. Just as he's about to continue working, Liz enters the barn carrying a basket and offers it to him so he can store the meat inside. Juiwan is genuinely happy to receive her help. Wanting to thank her, he tries speaking her language. Unfortunately, his pronunciation is absolutely terrible. Liz can't help smiling and gently corrects him. For some reason, being thanked makes her incredibly happy. After all, nobody has ever really thanked her before. And it also makes Liz realize just how many new experiences she's already shared with Juiwan.